Let's establish
intros.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, too late because I've already started the stream, so we're just going to go. Ladies and gentlemen, and variations thereof, welcome to the Selectives Lorecast, a casual Elder Scrolls podcast. Where it turns out we're not dead. Just turns out, like, don't really have an excuse. We didn't do shit for a while. Here we are. Okay. My name is Chris Nelson, but most people call me Rotten Deadite, and we didn't do a plan on who's going to go first. So the next 5 minutes is going to be a total clusterfuck. Okay. With me today are
Chris Franzen, otherwise known as Mojo.
Awkward silence.
God, somebody go.
Okay, I'm Michael, though you may know me as Scourgicus or Moon Sugar Leader.
I'm Luther, otherwise known as Darcius.
And I'm Andrew, known as the White Guar.
So today, at long last, we're talking about space lore. It's been a long time before we actually got around to doing this, so I'm really glad that we finally got the chance. And we got to make it through really fast because my Grand Theft Auto 5 roleplay stories are on, and I totally ship Avery Doyle, so I have to hurry up. So we've got actually a gigantic document that we're all looking at right now, which lists off almost every single mention of activities in Oblivion and the Aether. And there's just a ton of stuff. I don't think we're going to get to it all, so I'm going to try and get us moving through the big stuff. The first question that we always get when we start talking about space lore, when we talk about space lore, we're talking specifically about mortals from Mundus traveling through Oblivion for some reason. And the first question we usually get is this canon? And the next question that we get that I'm actually going to answer is, where is this in the games? There's actually a very simple question about where is space lore in games, and that is, there's literally an entire game about it.
Yes. Called
Elder Scrolls Battlespire, the Elder Scrolls Adventures Battlespire. The entire game takes place in a Battlespire floating in Oblivion. It's a training grounds for the Mages Guild, and it is literally space lore the game.
It's the most sci-fi shit ever. I mean, there's a Dream Sleeve internet network with computers and shit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
So-
they actually, there's so much. They, of course, the plot line to Battlespire sounds familiar, which is that there's a bunch of humans, and all of a sudden they get attacked by Mehran's Dagon, which has never happened before, or since, except all the time. And if I were to describe the game, I would describe it as kind of like an Ultima Underworld first-person shooter kind of thing. It had multiplayer deathmatch, believe it or not.
And like Doom.
Yeah, and it was kind of around the ass end of the Doom Quake era, I think. And it was, it's a game that you can play. Actually, you know what? Let's go back even further. A lot of people have also brought up the argument of the Elder Scrolls series is a fantasy role-playing game. They don't really like the idea of science fiction and fantasy role-playing games. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense. I would tell them that I have some very bad news for them, because they have been putting science fiction elements into fantasy role-playing games since Dungeons and Dragons, first or second edition.
Spelljammer.
Spelljammer, which is a huge inspiration for Elder Scrolls space lore. And I should also mention, as a matter of fact, even further than that, the original pitch for Morrowind by Kurt and Kirk.
Was it for Morrowind or was it for Redguard?
It might have been for Redguard.
And Redguard ended up spinning out of it.
Yeah, they wanted to make an Elder Scrolls. They wanted to make a video game that was basically sort of it was kind of Spelljammer-y, Spelljammer-ish. Spelljammer. Okay, Spelljammer is an expansion. I don't know, what do you call it? A DLC. Is a source book for Dungeons and Dragons, and it's basically about your characters gaining the ability to travel in the equivalent of spaceships, basically big magical devices that allow them to fly through the magical realms outside of the known world. And it's a hell of a lot like space lore in the Elder Scrolls universe in that respect. And it involves like this cool helmet that you have to put on in order to steer the ship and all this kind of stuff. And so the original plan for the game that Kurt Kuhlman and Kirkbride wanted to do was a game where you fly on spaceships around which is actually Jupiter, but it's so far into the future or whatever that they've forgotten the actual name of the planet. And metal is so rare that all the cannonballs on your ship have names and are recovered carefully. And there's not really
bone meal and stuff like that.
Yeah, people eat bone meal, and there's not a whole lot of like leather, so all the armor is made out of bones and sinew and stuff. And
Dark Sun.
Yeah, it was basically kind of like a Dark Sun meets Spelljammer kind of thing, and it was very inventive and crazy. And they pitched it to Todd Howard, and Todd Howard said, "Wait, this is way too fucking weird. Why don't you just take some of this stuff and put it into that Elder Scrolls universe that we're already doing?" And so they had to tune a lot of it down, and that's kind of where you got Redguard and Morrowind from this original pitch. There's like a story that Kirkbride tells on the internet of like that original pitch, and if you can find it, I highly recommend you read it because it does sound crazy awesome. It sounds game. I would love to play it.
Isn't that the thing where they were attacking enemies made of math or something like that?
Could be.
I don't remember.
I don't recall that coming from that.
Maybe they had weapons made of math. I don't know, but it was really cool.
It fits the motif, that's for sure.
I remember moth ships. Yeah, that's where moth ships came from.
So, as a matter of fact, in one of the original D&D modules, there was an adventure that you could send your players on. That actually, the end of the game, the end of the adventure, actually ended up with them breaking into an underground government facility and finding a data center. So it's all Dungeons and Dragons fantasy and so on. Yeah. And then at the very end of it, they're walking around through this horrible metallic dungeon where the walls are all lit up with little blinking lights and so on. And it doesn't make a whole lot of sense until you see a piece of artwork and it's the characters in D&D gear walking through a data center. And it's basically like, kind of like, the big twist is, it's post-apocalyptic.
That's not White Plume Mountain, is it?
I don't think so.
No, White Plume Mountain, though, is very sci-fi.
Yeah,
White Plume Mountain has a lot of sci-fi elements, and that was written by the great Michael Schick.
Lawrence Schick? Yeah.
Yeah, Lawrence Schick. What the hell am I talking about? Yeah. I just added two people together.
And that's White Plume Mountain won all kinds of stuff. So that's that's a big freaking deal right there.
And that's sci-fi fantasy as fuck.
Mm-hmm. Well, and then you got Warhammer as well.
40K, yeah.
Yeah.
40K or fantasy, they both are. Yeah. They're both very sci-fi.
Yeah.
But anyway, when we're talking specifically about what inspired the Elder Scrolls, the original like Arena and Daggerfall were both basically just the Elder Scrolls. Were just basically the Dungeons and Dragons, adventure that they just took and put into a computer game, which is like 99% of computer role-playing games how they started.
Yeah.
So we should also mention that Elder Scrolls Online also has a great deal of space lore in it. As a matter of fact, the Mananaut goggles are an item in there, and there's also, if you're in Molag Bal's dimension when you start off the game, at the very beginning of the game when you're in the process of escaping your prison and you walk through Molag Bal's dimension, it's full of machinery and sci-fi stuff, steam vents and all kinds of stuff. It's very science fiction. If not in name, then certainly in appearance. So the point that I'm basically trying to get at is that sci-fi in the Elder Scrolls is not a new thing. Sci-fi in fantasy settings is not a new thing. I think Kirkbride once said that he prefers to tell people that he writes science fiction and not fantasy. So if you're curious about where this stuff is in the games, then that's where it is. And if you're looking for more like in-game sci-fi stuff, then there's a lot of texts in Battlespire. If you pick those up, there's literally, I mean, there are like emails basically in the game that you can read, and it's good stuff.
And of course, in the AD quest line in ESO, you go to the moons.
That's true.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
2 of them.
Yeah.
Of the 4.
I thought there were 3.
Oh man, that's 8.
Okay, there comes the whole bucket.
I mean, for clarity, Ziegler's referencing Master Secunda, Lorecast, and then probably the main moon.
The main, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's from
Which may or may not be real. That's originally spun out of a Temple Zero text. I believe on the Return False thread on the old official forums.
Really?
The Tenders of the Main. It's a part of the second pocket guide to the Empire.
Yeah.
That Temple Zero was spinning up that they unfortunately never finished, but that section was less where the lunar dimension.
Yeah, the theory is that's the divine aspect of the main. So when Ridthar Ridata achieved divinity, he became a moon made of a gigantic hairball. I feel like there's a terrible joke in here somewhere, and that's
no, it's in there. You don't have to feel it.
And that's one of the moons, and of course the body of Lorecast, which may or may not be the body of Lorcan. Let's not go into that. But you go to the den of Lorecast, and you also go to Secunda. Yes,
I think so. Yeah.
So it's all in there, man. I mean, there's just a ton of sci-fi stuff in ESO.
If you're looking to play any sci-fi stuff in Skyrim, I recommend you get really close to anything that TrainWiz has made.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
We also wall, man.
And any
was it Aeronautics? I think
Aeronautics. I was just going to say that.
You actually go to. I think you go to. Don't you go to Master or Secunda at some point in Aeronautics? Yeah.
The world spaces are essentially empty.
Yeah.
Like, I think Master has like some wood docks, and that's it.
Yeah.
You know, and I don't know if Secunda was in it or not either, but
I don't remember.
Just the quest alone. Well, that's what he's known for, is engaging quests, because that one I think you have to like repair the ship. Something like that.
Yeah.
But it's very expansive. I was kind of shocked for something that he just whipped it up.
Yeah,
I don't real planning.
I don't understand how TrainWiz's head works. I don't think anybody does.
TrainWiz, you can whip up Tatterdemalion if you want. No.
Nah, man, it's entirely
he was on
busy.
the team.
Yeah, he was on the team. He was an advisor. We just asked him.
His project lead on that. I'm like, I feel like so inadequate to be his project lead.
Right?
I felt the same way. I kept sending him emails like, is this even possible? And he would go like, dude, have you even opened the construction kit? Yes, this is possible. What is wrong with you? Like, do your homework.
Just do it for us.
Yeah, but I mean, I spent a lot of time just asking him stuff like, we want to do something like this. Can we do something like this? And he would go, yeah. And then he was very honest with me. He said, like, there's really not much that you guys are doing that wouldn't be very easy. And
right. Just asset heavy, but
it's just so fucking ridiculously asset heavy that it just couldn't happen. We didn't have $50 million to throw around, so that was the end of it.
Yeah.
There's Ziegler, you want to walk me through this? We've got Coda all the way up the top. I don't feel honestly that we even need to mention that. We've already spent an entire cast talking about Coda. If you don't know anything about Coda, you're watching the wrong cast.
Right.
You just go back. Pause right here. I'll wait.
Do your reading.
Yeah, go back and do your homework, and then because dude. All right. Okay. And So we've got Cosmology.
Yeah, that's a good one. That's one of the best sources for space lore in Elder Scrolls. Can you guys hear me? Hello?
Yeah.
Yes.
Sure. No, you're good. Yeah.
No idea what that was.
Oh, okay. So this is a link at the Imperial Library, which I'm going to probably forget, but I'm going to try not to forget to put into the comments on this into the description on this video. Oh God, there's all kinds of shit here.
There's a ton of stuff on here from ESO that may or may not be really relevant.
Which a lot of this, the first time I saw all of these, there was a mod in Morrowind. It was the Illuminated Order of the Invisibles. Anyone play through that?
No.
Ring a bell at all? So basically, it was a faction that you could join that allows you to follow some more scholarly pursuits, like more so than you could do in the Mages Guild. So you investigate like the Sixth House and the Dwemer, and there's all kinds of stuff. It's really cool. And there's this machine that you come across. It's literally a computer, like a Dwemer built computer, and you can ask it all these questions, and these are the answers it feeds you. What are the planets? What is Nirn? What are the moons? What are Master and Secunda? And actually reading through these, it's verbatim. And by the time you finish the conversation, it tells you your intelligence score has gone up by 1. Which is an incentive to actually look into this kind of stuff.
Nice.
It was really, really a cool mod.
So we've got there's a lot of mention like when people talk about space lore, they like to talk about things like the 9th era and or the 5th era for that matter. I think eras that exist after from the 5th on up are probably not a subject that we necessarily have to delve into today, because I feel like they're underdeveloped and unexplored and hard to really describe.
Yeah. When was the last time you heard about something coming from the 7th era like that? Nobody writes that. It's always 9th, 5th, or nth. Like that's usually where there's lots of content.
But you know what? We completely forgot the most obvious example of space or sci-fi stuff, which is of course the Dwemer with their steampunk robots.
Yeah, very true.
And then of course the other thing is Pelinal. Pelinal comes from the 5th era, right? Is that right, or is he nth era?
I think so. Yeah.
I don't recall it ever being specified.
They don't specify. Yeah.
Is what it said. Yeah, a future Kalpa or something. Yeah.
And he is a robot, and he has a lightsaber for the one hand.
Or laser cannon. It's unclear.
Or something. That is true.
It's called a killing light, so it could be any which. Could just be
the arquebus.
Well, I mean,
it could be a magic spell. It could be anything.
Yeah.
True.
The songs of Pelinal are written in a very old language, and so there's a lot of like grammar and so on that are used to be evocative but not descriptive. Let's see. Other than and I mean there's something in there about Pelinal's chest being empty, or possibly.
Yeah.
And they call him the Star-Made Knight. That's a pretty interesting name.
So the good news is that outside of games, we've got lots and lots and lots of material. People kind of think, like, they kind of consider the sci-fi lore in Elder Scrolls to be the kind of the epitome of the deep lore of the hard to find stuff, and it is. And when you get a hold of something really tiny like that, people want to write a lot about it. And so we've got things like, definitely the love letter from the 5th era mentions some things that eventually are explained in air quotes in Coda. Let's see. Professor Numinatus was a sort of like a one-off plot line that Kirkbride wrote about a character who's sort of like the Tamrielic version of Doctor Who, kind of.
Yeah. Like a mix of Doctor Who and James Bond, just less lethal in a direct way, I guess. You know, he's called the Agent Provocateur, you know, which kind of sums up what he does. Which that's a position with, not with the Elder Council, but that's falls under the purview of the Elder Council. But yeah, he's kind of a behind the scenes type dude. You know, not a lot of people. And I want to say too, he's actually from like an alternate universe, I want to say. Hold on, there's a thread on it where MK wait, hold on. Where MK goes into detail about it a bit. Let's see here. I think this is it. Yeah, grew up in an alternate version of the capital city. I can link it because it was just MK posted in a random thread. But yeah, anyways, yeah, he's basically like Doctor Who.
And of course, MK is a huge Doctor Who fan.
Yeah,
of course.
Yeah,
to say the least.
Well, it says here in the Bevsoft forum here, this has an arc bus that shoots good ideas.
Yeah,
like that.
Nice.
That must be the. I mean, this is when 2012. This must be the first mention of like arc bus as a word, which we see in the Morrowind expansion for ESO. When there are Dwemer constructs that have them, it's an arc bus construct.
Yeah.
But, I mean, obviously, devs are paying attention to the kinds of language that the elk uses. So.
Yeah.
So, Ziegler, do you want to talk a little bit about the tenders of the main?
Sure. So let me see if I can pull that up quick. Give me just a moment. So you have this whole thing, the return false, and it's just kind of going on. It's talking about stuff about why the one guide to the Empire was rejected, and right in the middle is this thing, tenders to the main, lessware, and it starts talking. It's a little bit confusing. It starts talking about the lunar provinces and the lunar colonies of the Khajiit, and this idea that the Khajiit climbed upon each other to reach the moons. And there's a couple different ways to interpret this. Some people think that they used so much moon sugar that they got high enough to go to the moons themselves. I go for more like it's a meditative thing. Or maybe they literally climbed. Who knows? It doesn't really say. But the really fun part that I love is the part about the main. And this goes like this. Let's see here. The main encourages visitors to his sacred self and does not distinguish rank, gender, or shape. At any time, droves of Khajiit, ranging from revered battle cats to modest sugar miners, can be found waiting at Torval's audience tower for the first glimpse of him on the horizon. He is a moon. Many of these join the main on his journey for a while and watch as he shapes and reshapes the land. Sounds like Talos. The interior is usually said to be ill-suited to a description in words and vary strongly between accounts. Some guests report a boundless swirl of hair, waving leisurely in pink sucrose vapors like kelp in water. I'd pay money to play that game. Others recall strange geographies, hallways, and inviting furnished rooms, which they never managed to visit more than once. On the main's character, opinions are undivided, wise beyond time, comforting, beautiful, and perfect in any way imaginable, etc., etc. So, kind of where we all end up landing on this is that the Khajiit kind of have this relationship with the moons, not simply because of imbibing moon sugar, but because some of them live there, and that you have these colonies of Khajiit who just live and harvest moon sugar directly from the source. and maybe are able to communicate with the Khajiit still on Nirn. It's not completely certain.
So it's, but this is a good example of one of those things that people write on the forums that are so damn good that everybody else pretty much just goes, yeah, that's right.
That's
yeah.
lore. And that was Temple Zero, who wrote quite a few things. And did we ever find out who Temple Zero is?
It was a collective of old school lore beards. Like, I know Din was in there. William Weird, or better known as Lootmoth, where they basically, it was just a group of scholars and Kirkbride basically going, let's write the rejected second pocket guide to the Empire. And that's where that all spun out of. And plus they've done some other stuff besides that, of course, but that's the progenitor of the idea of Monkey Truth, was from Temple Zero.
And of course there's monkeystruth.net, which has some of this stuff too.
Yeah, I mean, there used to be so much more, but I don't think a single person even knows what their logins are anymore.
Yeah, I haven't logged in about 4 years, and by the time actually it's 5 years now, and I don't remember either.
Yeah,
I missed the train.
But also from that document, I mean, they talk about from Tenders to the Main. They talk about their province of Lesware, which is like elsewhere on Secunda, right? They go in that one.
Yeah. From what I can gather, it sounds like the lunar colony is on Secunda. Yes.
Yeah.
There's also this weird thing, and I never did quite figure out what was going on with it, that when before Oblivion came out, there was discussion that Leowyn was actually part of the lunar colony, and there was discussion of whether or not when you go to Leowyn, if you actually end up on the moon and don't realize it.
What?
Yeah.
What kind of evidence is there for that?
Oh boy.
I mean, it's interesting, but
Yeah,
if I recall,
isn't
there an area like south of Leowyn where it's like an entire like a commune of Khajiit right down there?
I believe there is, yeah.
If I recall, there's that quest of Sheogorath where you summon like rats and then flaming dogs fall from the sky.
Yeah.
That's my favorite quest.
And all the Khajiit freak out. Yeah.
Poor Khajiit.
It's a sign of the end times or whatever.
Yeah.
I love that quest after doing the Shivering Isles, because then Haskell just talks to you like, fuck are you doing?
Good to see you keeping busy, sir.
Yeah. You're a perfect candidate.
So we've also got there's a lot of additional information to be found in a story Kirkbride wrote called Tiber Septim's Sword Beating with Cyrus the Restless.
Yes.
Where he goes into somewhat more specifics about how you can travel to the moon, or into Oblivion in general. Up until this point, let's see, for space travel, we've had listed moth ships, which are the Empire's system of super-mundial travel.
Which that was mostly Riemann era, right?
Right.
Yeah, it's actually a little bit hard to pinpoint when they stopped making moth ships.
Sure.
We know the first one was commissioned by Raymond the First, and it wasn't completed until Raymond the Second, or the third. I think the second, though.
I want to say the second. I want to say the second. Yeah.
And then we don't have a termination point as far as the construction of them, but we know at some point battle spires became I don't know if more practical, just because the moth ships were bioengineered.
Right.
I would assume that'd be a little more complicated.
You know, and are we in agreement that a moth ship was a giant moth that had a ziggurat strapped to it?
Yeah.
Yeah, pretty much.
That's pretty much okay.
Yeah.
Are they living moths? I never understood. Are they living moths, and where are they built?
Hey, it's Jeremy.
Oh no!
I thought it was
Hey,
Jeremy.
there it is.
I'm going to be doing a little fucking around here, and full disclosure, are we on air yet?
Yeah.
We are on air.
Never mind.
All right.
Yeah, keep that little nugget to yourself.
Oh, I will.
So we got the Moss ships. We got the Sunbirds, which were Alt Mary ships, except they were ships, but they were also birds, and they were made of the sun.
Well, those things were confusing too because like
I still don't
they
understand.
have like they have like a paragraph on it where they have like this mirror inside of like the Sunbird that they use to like see everything. I don't really know how it works.
They see in the void via shadows, so they'll have a light source, usually being the sun, and that'll determine their coordinates and stuff like that. But they will use a mirror to view the shadows against that light to track enemy ships and whatnot.
That's really weird.
A lot of the language of even just navigation, like they use all kinds of
I have a question about that actually, since they're using like shadows and stuff. Does that sound a lot like Plato's cave?
Oh boy.
Oh.
man.
I mean, I don't necessarily. I mean, I see where you got that from, just because of the shadows from the allegory, but I don't know.
I think it's more of a scientific diffraction thing than
Could be.
kind of allegorical.
It's hard for me to practically apply the allegory to something just so small as that.
Yeah. I mean, you'd have to see more allegories like that in other parts of Elder Scrolls too.
I mean, it could just be a way, and this is a crucial part, which I think Tiber Septim's sword meeting actually is the first to really go into detail about it, is the possible insanity that could be encountered by leaving the Mundus and entering the void and free traveling through it and having your mind
that's right,
lose its cohesion, I guess you could call it.
Yeah, that's Kirkbride was in a uncharacteristic outburst of plain language. Explained it to me like that Oblivion is psychosomatic. And the reason why people have a hard time in Tiber Septim's sword meeting, there's a little bit of, there's a couple of passages about how about how Cyrus's crew have a hard time breathing on the moon, and in order to basically what Kirkbride was telling me is like when you go up there, you basically forget how to breathe. And you have to remind yourself how to do it. And so some of the crew members would do things like wear a full, like breathing mask and suit and oxygen and all that kind of stuff. And then other people figured out how to do it by breathing through a straw or...
it says just learn how.
Yeah, basically you're tricking your brain to be like, I can breathe.
Right.
Well, yeah.
But
I mean,
at the same time, that's a temporary state. It's a state of self-delusion, basically, because even though Cyrus can do it without like any utility at all, without he could just take off his mask and do it. He still wears a suit because he's Cyrus, and he wants like low risk, and he wants to do everything as he wants to be,
as safe as possible.
Well, not necessarily safe, but he wants to do it right.
Okay.
So it's it's one of those things that like if you get distracted, like really distracted or really upset or something like that while you're on the moon, it's entirely possible you might forget how to breathe, and then you have to figure out how to do it again.
So is Oblivion not a vacuum like outer space in our universe?
Exactly, not exactly. It's not intended to be a vacuum.
I think
it's actually debatable about how gravity itself works in Oblivion. It's not so much that there isn't. Well, I mean, you could make the argument that people on Mundus don't breathe like you and I do, that they don't need oxygen or air for that matter. And or you could say that there's plenty of air everywhere, and that in Mundus or whatever there's still oxygen or an atmosphere or whatever, or in Oblivion there's still an atmosphere. The problem is that and this is the part that I keep coming back to when I'm trying to explain this to people. Oblivion, people are not, like, mortals are not intended to live in Oblivion. Right. Mundus was created so that they could exist. If you go outside of the environment for which that was created for you, it's, everything else is going to kill you in some way. And the way that Mundus does that, or the way that Oblivion does that, is myriad. But one of them is it basically, you forget how to live, if you want to put it that way, if you want to think about it like that. You just, you need Mundus to remind you of what being alive is like. And that means breathing. It might even mean heartbeats. It might mean anything.
Actually, I have a good explanation for that. I've said before that I think that the Arbus is a philosophical argument that the Mundus, that Nirn is aligned to the Aedra. It's Adronic, and that's is. And Oblivion is aligned to the Daedra and is the is not. And if you are Adronically aligned and go to Oblivion, all of Oblivion is trying to nope you right out of existence.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
Right. And that could also explain why it's really difficult for Daedra to stay on Nirn for very long without some kind of, I don't know, I forget what the term is they use, covenantal agreement with a mortal wizard or whatever. They have the kind of same effect, and then they're returned to the waters of Oblivion.
Yeah, I agree. That makes perfect sense to me. That's unfortunately kind of like a lot of the weird stuff that you see in the Elder Scrolls deeper lore is just sort of like the manifestation of a philosophical point.
Definitely.
So
I actually have something to add to that.
Oh, shoot.
Yeah, no, that's fine. I mean, there's another passage in the Tiber Septim sword meeting where they actually imply that you also can lose your sense of self. And you have to make prayers. Well, at least the Altmer make prayers to keep their sense of self intact. But yeah, I mean, so there's something happening with Oblivion that destroys your sense of self. But also, oh, go ahead.
No, that's right.
Oh, I was just going to talk about I had a question about Oblivion and the Void and how those two associate and stuff like that. But
it associates in the respect that Oblivion it's a void of the of is not.
But okay, like so when you're flying through the void of space, you are flying through the fabric of Oblivion.
Okay, well, you're thinking about Oblivion's fabric sort of as like the points in which the Itata poked through and created like the sun and like the stars and all that kind of stuff. The thing is that gets you thinking of the division between Oblivion and Aetherius as a three-dimensional object. But it's not. It's the separation between Mundus, Oblivion, and Aetherius is multidimensional. They exist inside of each other. So when you say that you move through Oblivion, it's not. You're not really moving through you're not really above Mundus. You're not really below Aetherius. You're just in a state.
Right.
You just have the attribute of existing in Oblivion.
And Oblivion's adjacent to that.
Right.
But you can't crash into Oblivion or anything crazy like that.
It's a void. You can't really crash into a void. That would.
Who knows? Well, because the Battle Spire, apparently it's anchored into a slipstream between Oblivion and Mundus.
Right. Mm-hmm.
So what does that imply exactly?
Well, when you start thinking about things existing inside of themselves, inside of other things, and you start dealing with third and fourth nested dimensions and subgradiency, it's somewhat more convenient to start thinking of them as fluid dynamics instead of like spheres, basically. So it becomes possible for things to flow into each other without violating the separation.
Okay, I gotcha.
It's like the whole universe is one big lava lamp. No, I don't know. All right.
But there is a sense in which Nern is different, and this is we were talking about. I think we established in one of the older videos that that maybe not Nern, but the rest of the other realms, like Cold Harbor, whatever, are infinite planes, but mortal minds can't perceive infinity, so we perceive them as planets.
Yeah.
But Nern is weird because it isn't infinite. And it does seem to have, it does have a planetary limit, which is the moons. And of course, there's that whole thing in Khajiit lore that that Joan and Jode exist as guardians to protect the rest of Nurni from the rage of Anor, the father figure. So there is some. We talked. Me and one of the other guys in the lore community talk about it as a warp field barrier, and that's why time is weird when you leave Nern and you go into Oblivion.
Yeah, you're not talking about a barrier as like a physical wall. You're talking about a barrier as in like the sound barrier, as in there's a certain speed at which you travel and that things become difficult. It's like the speed of light barrier,
Yes.
It's an information barrier or something.
Or a little more aptly, which, I mean, I don't know how many people know this, but in DC Comics, the multiverse of the DC Comics is the Orrery of Worlds, which is the actual multiverse, is surrounded by the Speed Force barrier, which is the speed of light. It's basically exactly what we're talking about. And then outside of that is like the sphere of the gods, where you have, the New Genesis and Apocalypse and Heaven and Hell and Dream and Nightmare. And then outside of that is the Overmind, I think. I don't know. The Overmind, which is the source. But yeah, it's a more abstract usage of the word barrier.
I'm trying to think of anything else that we're missing here. There's actually tons. I'm just trying to think of what we can cover.
Well, we
talked about sunbirds. Okay, let's talk a little bit more about Eleanor sunbirds. They're sort of described as like a phoenix-like shape. Kirkbride told me that they don't. I think Kirkbride told me, or Kirkbride told somebody, and I read that they don't have a form exactly. That they're more sort of an abstract mathematical concept.
Oh, I thought they were made of hard light.
Yeah, something like that. Like it's not really a shape so much as I guess you'd call it a phenomenon. They are. I hypothesized at one point or another that they travel by existing everywhere at once and then limiting themselves down to their destination.
Oh, that's cool. That's like the improbability drive on a
exactly.
Yeah,
that's literally where I stole it from. Which is
great. I love it.
Moth ships, if I recall correctly, physically transport themselves, which fits for a spaceship that was built by humans. It's just the problem is they do that by altering their size, because one infinite dimension is, some infinities are bigger than others. So you have one dimension that's physically larger than the other one. If you exist in one dimension and then transfer yourself to another one, you might appear in the other one as larger or smaller. So moth ships have to dilate. They have to get smaller or bigger depending on what dimension they're moving to. So part of the docking procedure for a moth ship is shrinking down to size.
This is sounding like they're super dimensional.
They're moving to other dimensions.
Yeah. Okay. Sorry.
Well, that's how. You've come to the proper conclusion. Yes, that's exactly right. I
want to bring up just real quick, just for the sake of the record, the sunbirds are directly mentioned in the Third Pocket Guide to the Empire, under the Void of Oblivion chapter, which is one of the first introductory ones, where they actually list out the sunbirds of Alinor and the expeditions of the Raymond dynasty, which we know from out-of-game texts are the moth ships, and how they actually traversed the celestial spheres. Even, I want to say it actually said going to Aetherius, and bringing back actual celestial materials for the Orreys.
That's in the section called Magic with Aetherius. It's that third paragraph.
Yeah.
The expeditions of the Raymond dynasty and the sunbirds of Alinor are the most famous attempts in our histories, and it is a cosmic irony that both of them eventually dissolved for the same reason: the untenable expenditures required to reach magic by Magica. Their only legacy is the royal imperial manonauts of the Elder Council and the Great Ori at First Hold, etc. Oh, and whose spheres are made up of genuine celestial material gathered by travelers during the Merethic era. They brought back space rocks.
Yeah.
That's pretty legit.
So they had I was trying to think of what else we've also heard mention of, well, I mean, in Tiber Septim versus Cyrus, we've got sort of like a hashed up, spaceship built out of a boat that's suspended in the air by giant bags full of slowed farts.
Yeah.
Yep.
And they literally floated up to Secunda. Was it Secunda or was it Masser?
Masser.
Yeah. I think it was Masser.
And it's worth noting that if you know anything about in the current, like in my sort of like ahead, the model that I have in my head of multidimensional travel in the Elder Scrolls, that's pretty much impossible. But that's kind of also why it worked. Like it's kind of hard to explain because the thing is they had also surrounded the field in a disbelief engine, I think.
Belief engine.
Something like that.
The ASSN. Yeah.
And one of the reasons why and this again goes back to the idea of why it's hard to breathe in Oblivion. It's because you have to maintain the faith required to just exist. And so it sort of stands to reason that if you get in a boat and truly believe through self-hypnosis or insanity or too much, 420 scumet, it's entirely possible for you to just, this is totally doable. And the next thing you know, you floated up to the moon. It just works. It fits in the idiom, There's been other suggestions. There's at one point or another, I think Daria posted something to her Tumblr about vehkships.
Oh, yeah.
I don't
know that there's... Is there any info about them?
Well, if I recall correctly, they were actually technically for something else. I think it was a game or a setting or something that they were working on that was sort of like Elder Scrolls with the serial numbers filed off. And
I'm pretty sure it was a homebrew type campaign that they were working on.
I found a Reddit post on Test Lore from 3 years ago that asks the question what to make of vehkships. And it has no comments.
That's a good question. What do you make of it? There's 3 of them, or they always come in 3s. I don't remember. And some of them.
The way that we can look at that is, Vivek his whole divinity is about the Prolix Tower. He ascended via the Prolix. So we can kind of go back to your impossibility of going upwards. So these vehkships basically power themselves by just convincing the crew, or vice versa.
Yeah.
Dimensional travel is
one of the
possible.
ships, if I recall correctly, would actually kill you. Like there was a very good chance if you got on I seem to recall there's a very good chance if you got on one of the ships that it would just straight up murder everybody on it.
Well, and if they're traveling, sorry.
Yeah, well, if I recall correctly, that was because the vehkship system was built on the enantiomorph. So you had a thief, a warrior, and a mage, and therefore you also had a betrayal. So.
I love it. I was thinking of the tribunal at first, not the.
Well, it was that too. Yeah, but I mean, the tribunal is an enantiomorph too. You have the thief, the warrior, the mage, and of course a betrayal.
Yep.
So
would it kill all of the crew or just the captain?
I don't remember. It's been a long time since I've read it, and I can't find it anymore.
Whichever ship is the king ship.
Yeah, the artwork was very good. Let's see. So there was vehkships. There was something about the somebody help me out here. There was something about the Hist.
Oh, is that the Hist-Jill Wars you're talking about?
Yeah, the Hist-Jillian Wars, which is Ninth Era.
That was from
Ninth Era.
Kinmune, yeah.
Kinmune.
Yep.
I seem to recall there being something about the Hist showing up in the end of Cyrus versus Tiber Septim, but I don't think that part ever got published.
Yeah,
I remember Cyber talking with the Hist, but I don't remember that being part of his duel with Cyrus.
Yeah,
that wasn't ever released publicly. So
I know Vivek mentioned
spoilers, bro.
Sorry, it's not a big one.
No, it isn't. It isn't.
I know Vivek mentions the Hist in his sword meeting with Cyrus.
Oh,
I mean, is that what you're thinking of?
There's
No,
something
I-
here.
He
I
says
think
how
I know what
like,
he's talking about. I
Yeah.
think,
Yeah.
hold on. Let me. I'm pulling up the
Hist.
document if I could fucking find it, but I'm pretty sure I know where you're getting that from. But
I
might
don't
have
think
made it
we're
up.
allowed to talk about it, and I don't think I remember it clearly enough to talk about it anyway, so it probably works out.
Yeah.
still talking?
No, I mean I know we. Yeah. Yeah.
Are we-
Oh wait. No, I'm thinking of something else that also
okay.
can't be talked about.
Are we still talking about the Hist?
Yeah.
Okay. There's something called a Hist superliner slip seed stockstrom built grow and wash branch. Okay. Snapthorn
Wow.
belly base crawler phlomatic thornplex verschlicht ix thaxilus is thal. What the hell? It's got a huge name. Yeah.
Can you copy paste it?
Sure. Why not?
I gotta see
I'll
this.
just copy and paste the whole. I'll just copy and paste the whole paragraph here, and you can like look at it. I like how the ending it just says it made a sound. Just the ending is it made a
What
sound.
the fuck is that from? Where'd you find that?
It's on Cyrus
it's
and
from
Tiber Septum.
Oh, it is. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's crazy. I've never seen that before, and I read that like a long time ago.
Jesus God, that's a lot. Okay.
You just need like a Kirkbride translator here to.
Yeah.
I
make
don't.
sense.
I don't think. Even,
You couldn't pay me enough money to try and decipher that.
yeah. There's no way.
Throw $1 million at me and I'd flip you off.
I think this is straight up just like word salad to make
Yeah.
it like every single descriptor that
That's
he was thinking
what
of while
Mike
writing
does.
this, it just tumbled out.
Yeah. It's a little bit like stream of consciousness. It's a little bit like
Yeah.
jazz. He's just
love it.
improvising on it. Yeah.
Long-winded stream of consciousness, which actually, if I stop and think about it, would fit the Hist in my.
It would. Yeah,
Yeah,
actually,
it
that's a
really
very good
does.
point. Yeah, it would fit really well. That's a really good point.
It's like a view into the Hist's mind, almost, and how they think. But you might want to put that on the description if you can remember.
If I can remember, I'll put it there. I'm really pretty much going to go through this document and just rip shit out and throw it in.
Sounds good.
Okay, so that's Hist. We never really did anything with we had plans for the Bosmer and their plant ships that we never did anything with.
Oh, really?
There was if you were in the old IRC Memospore ARG, there was a section about the Red Guard, the people of Hammerfell traveling through space on ships made out of spirit swords. It was just one guy surrounded by a giant spirit sword, flinging himself through space and
That's
cutting other
neat.
ships in half.
Like it.
Very
and,
aggressive.
And I'm trying to think if there are any other races that we haven't covered.
I feel like I've heard about a Nord ship that will use like their ancestors to fly.
Yeah, the ancestor flown ships. Yeah. Well, there was the Tatterdemalion stuff that we did about the ships they used to fly over the lightning sea, but that wasn't supposed to. Those don't leave the surface of Secunda supposedly. And then there's slowed ships.
Oh my God!
Which I don't remember if I came up with this idea or somebody else came up with the idea of the slowed ships were actual slowed, like one slowed.
That
a
was
giganton slowed.
That was
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure that was my idea.
Okay.
That's weird.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They just grow to such proportions that they don't need ships. They just kind of tumble around space.
Yeah, and you just strap things to them, and then go along for the ride, basically. Gigantic bloated slugs filled with farts. That just
That's exactly it.
pretty much the grossest thing you can think of, and that's the sled.
Yep.
I love sled.
I think I want to say slowed ships were mentioned in a game document somewhere, and I think by name but not description. And then,
wait, I think there's a sketch. Holy shit, my stomach.
Yeah, there's
Sorry,
a sketch.
it made a loud noise. I want to say there's a sketch of that MK did of a slowed ship docking somewhere. I might have just purely made that up out of nowhere, but I want to say
it's a slowed floater or a gas bag mass transit. If you Google that.
Okay.
Yeah. Because they do use like gas bag transportation, which I kind of interpreted to be they're like the bloated corpses of like whales and shit that they just kind of float around as like buses.
Well, the idea of them floating around dead things does make sense.
They are necromancers.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'll be right back.
Nope, that's not it. That's on Science Direct.
Yeah.
It's a gas bag type floating bridge, but no.
Let's see.
No, I don't see anything like that.
I'm not getting any hits on Imperial Library either.
I just straight up Googled it.
Oh, there it is.
Google never finds me. TIL
Belief
stuff.
engines are mentioned specifically for vehkships. Auxiliary semi-shock point nigularities provide energy for short dream sleeve jumps in case a vehkship's main ego is damaged, allowing the Coda paravent to potentially get to safety of a void yard orbital.
That sounds familiar. Where'd you find that?
I think that's Numanatus, possibly.
It's that's in on the Imperial Library. I want to say it's Michael Kirkbride's Coda quote or whatever it is,
no,
and it's on
from his forum
vehkships.
archives. Yeah,
on vehkships.
Oh,
and I actually want to say it was just posted. I don't think it was posted in direct connection with Numanatus. I don't think. I don't know. That shit was so long ago. That was like 2011 or something like that. Maybe even earlier.
Oh. The ASSN is strictly last-ditch technology. However, it's often deemed as too dangerous for its own good because it works on the rarefied principles of Fine-Aster's inversion, a set of mathematics that doesn't exist in our own dimension. Vehkships have vanished in nil space trying to make an ASSN jump. Indeed, the celestial irregularity known as the M4BV Legarity, in which the Coda Oblivion Vanquisher appears and implodes in perpetuity, is the belief system's most famous cautionary tale. So this is moving through Oblivion by belief, which is required pretty much. I mean, that's how you have to do it.
It sounds like
if you think about it, basically every single even the Imperial moth ships are moving through by a form of belief. In this particular case, fueled by ancestor worship. So
yeah, and I mean it's not that crazy of an idea in the in-game book, Reality and Other Falsehoods, it talks about how, magic is used. Magic is basically convincing the universe that your idea is better, and that on a much larger scale, that's what void travel is. It's convincing Oblivion that you should be allowed to do this.
And this is part of from the 36 lessons. This is basically the story, the main thread behind the Sermon of the Mace, which is that the guy with the biggest gun gets to determine what's real.
Right.
If your will is stronger than the universe, then you can decide what happens and what doesn't. So, and I mean, the universe in general is, as we know in the Elder Scrolls universe, schizophrenic and unreliable. So. Let's see.
I don't know if we mentioned Kinmune, or I think you guys pronounce it Communi, which is a mining robot from the 9th era.
Yeah, but what's it mining?
It's mining.
Let's take a look.
I think it's the Breath of Kine, isn't it? Or no, not.
It is.
Yeah,
that's exactly what it is. Yeah. So it's either on. It's either on the planetoid or plane of Kine.
Yep.
Or Kine's breath is a thing that can be mined.
Maybe it's like oxygen or something. I mean,
I'm kind of seeing like the gas planet miners, like from whatever generic sci-fi you want to bring up.
Sure. Yeah.
So it's like a gaseous state of reality that.
But even weirder.
Yeah, it's like a.
Maybe it's a hallucinogen. Who knows?
Well, I mean, Kine's breath is what powers the Thume. It's what gave birth to dragons to let them fly, kind of deal. So it's got to be something cool.
I don't know. It's just a bunch of minotaurs. I have no idea.
Well, I mean, if you think about Kind's breath in the same way that you think about how God breathed life into man,
Yep.
and the connection, and the connection from there to Thum and its effect on reality, then Kind's breath could be an energy source of some type.
Possibly.
Harvested from, and remembering, of course, from, is it the monomyth?
Mhm.
That the gods are also planets? Well, we perceive them as planets.
Yeah.
And so
They're planes, but yeah.
or planes, yeah. That wouldn't be that weird that you have some kind of robot that goes to the plane of a god and harvests part of it.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
I mean, it's definitely weirder than anything we've seen in game, but from the lore, that totally makes sense.
Yeah.
And
But yeah, they never specify what the breath of kind is, so who knows?
Well, there's so many different ways to go on it. That's why I like it. There's a lot of
different interpretations of what it could be.
So, I mean, the way that golems were originally built in the in Judaic magical practice was by putting the word of God on a scripture and then putting it into its body. So that's another thing to parallel you to the okay. Space lore. Space lore. Let's see, what else could we, okay, so how, as far as trying to explain how Oblivion and Mundus work together and Aetherius, I frequently refer people to the there's a YouTube video or a series of videos called Imagining the 10th Dimension.
Oh yeah, that's a cool one.
That's probably the best way I can find to explain to somebody how nested dimensions work. If you try watching those, and I've never made it through. When I first watched it, I couldn't make it through the first time. I had to stop it and rewind and do it again. It's really complicated, so don't feel like you're getting lost. I mean, if you are getting lost, that's fine. Everybody gets lost. Back it up and do it again.
I've seen that a couple times.
Yeah, it is, believe it or not, this probably the simplest way to explain it, and it's pretty friggin' tough. And then the other thing to remember is that when you're talking about people moving from one dimension to the other in the Elder Scrolls universe, there's a whole lot of different ways to do it. If everything's nested inside of itself, then technically you're already in Aetherius, you're already in Oblivion. You just have to,
it's a matter of folding the dimensions on themselves, and
that's talked about in Doors of Oblivion, I think.
Yep.
Morian Zenos. He talks about the easiest way to go to Oblivion is just to believe you're there. Yep. Or just to be there. So there are transliminal transportation, it has multiple ways of going about it.
And let's see.
Well, I know we mentioned Battlespire the game and how there's the one Battlespire, and that's obviously in space. But I mean, as Battlespires themselves, because I mean, we assume that there's more than one. They were used as training grounds for Manonauts and what have you. And I mean, if one was obviously in space, I mean, I think it stands to reason that others could be used for space travel as well. I mean, unless there's some outside force that moved the first one into that out of space place that we find in the game. So, I mean, I've always kind of played with the idea of using battle spires as a mode of transportation rather than a training ground. And that, I mean, that's something we see in the sword meeting with Tiber Septim and Cyrus, because Cyrus actually uses a slode, pours salt on him, and uses him as a torpedo to blow the shit out of a battle spire and crash it into Masser. And so
they're called battle spires too. So
yeah. So I mean, it's I can imagine that it's kind of a parallel to like a moth ship, but without the use of any kind of creature to create it.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah. It's not necessary for you to be able to physically move for you to be able to move across dimensions. Yeah.
Yeah.
Have I just been thinking about this for so long that I've just run out of stuff to talk about? Because
well, Chris, you and I had a really good conversation. I think it was a couple weeks ago about why humans would go into the void. And there's and there was from the old Bethesda forums, Kirkbride had a post called Tatterdemalion, the lunar province of Secunda.
That's a terrible name. No one would ever like it.
And it has this line. Let me see if I can. Where the heck does this even begin? In second year 2757, he, that being Raymond I, circumvented the bureaucracy of his own throne, including all county courtships and trans-provincial authorities, to make plans to colonize Tamriel's twin moons. He commissioned the Nacronax of the, get this one, Immaterial Harmonics Institute of Incongruitech and Extrinsic Travel. Say that 5 times fast.
I love it.
Begin work on the first engineered megalomoth vessel fortresses, quote, to reclaim all extramundic holdings and grant lands from the maddening nighttime tatters of Shezar's proof of man's provenance. Basically, let's go conquer the void because we're awesome, and everybody needs to know that we're awesome.
And we will do these things and the other things not because they're easy, but because they are hard.
Exactly. And it goes on from there. There's all kinds of stuff it says. But you and I had talked about, why was it that there was this need to craft an empire across the stars, as it said in Where Were You When the Dragon Broke?
Well, in Riemann's case, it was because Riemann felt that just the fact that Secunda and Mundus were up there, in other words, that the corpses of Lorcan were up there in the first place, meant that mankind being related to Shezar had province on it. That was our shit up there.
I mean, we can talk about manifest destiny too, and that being one of mankind's things as a trope.
Just by virtue of being born, mankind has a right to conquer everything in its sight. That's certainly the kind of thing Riemann was into. I mean, he was all about, anyway, this is all about a lot of stuff, but also because we might also point out that Riemann contracted an existing organization, which meant that people had already been going up there.
Yeah.
And in the case of why anybody would ever want to go to Mundus, to Oblivion, it's for the same reason that people would want to climb mountains, because it's there. Because it's a mysterious thing that has never been explored, and it's out of view, and they can't have it, and therefore they need to have it. And so it's that lust for the thing which is denied to you that causes people to go do ridiculous things, that's an important lesson for anybody to think about. Why do you want anything? Is it because part of the appeal because you can't have it? There's always going to that's definitely, that was a big thing for Riemann, because as he was one of the greatest emperors Cyrodiil has ever known, and the idea of him something being out of his reach was probably absolutely terrifying to him.
Yeah. And there was the idea that, because if we understand the Riemann dynasty or the Riemann Empire to have been truly an empire across the stars, at some point then that means he pretty much had conquered Nirn, or as much of Tamriel as he wanted to continue. It wasn't enough just to rule Tamriel. That there was something in him that drove him to want to extend this empire into the reaches of Oblivion.
It may have also had something to do with that Riemann may have just run into a brick wall. Like he didn't have Tiber Septim's grasp of military tactics. He wasn't able to completely dominate all of Tamriel like Tiber Septim was by war or politics. And so when he was, it may have been that he just reached a point where he's like, well, I can't, clearly I'm not going to get to dominate Skyrim or whatever, or I don't know. So like, and those damn dark elves just ain't letting me in there. So if I'm just going to go where people aren't already at, and so he just decided, well, let's go stick a flag on the moon, and that was it.
Eating other people's faces only goes so far.
I know you can only do so many,
Yeah.
Ejaculating on armies it gets boring after the 20th time.
It really does.
Is that some Cody?
It looks like it.
No.
Ah, damn it.
Damn. It's probably just some
Actually, I
Corey.
think that's cool.
It's just Corey.
Yeah. Oh well.
Corey! Oh, I see.
Hey.
I'm glad you made it, man. We're literally at the end.
Well,
Just about.
Geez. What did you want to talk about, Corey?
I don't know. Someone said my name, so I came.
Space lore, baby. Space lore.
What have we talked about thus far? Commune, the various types of ship.
Enough.
We talked about various references within the games that point to sci-fi and therefore space lore.
Okay.
We talked about Pelinal.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, cool.
We went over the cosmology. We briefly dipped a finger in Coda for a brief second, and then we're like, you know what, we're not going to go over that because if you don't know what Coda is,
it's too big.
Okay.
Go read. Yeah.
You guys did Battlespire, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Did Battlespire.
Okay. You guys did void ships and sunbirds and
Yep, all the various types of flight.
Mm-hmm.
Or
you guys
not
did
flight.
basically Dwemer period.
Yeah.
Manonauts and
This is good. Keep it going. This is good.
I actually have a question.
Shit, I think we covered it all.
I have a
Talk
question.
about Lig not having a void.
Who? Oh,
Did we talk about Lig not having a void?
Friends and left. Balls.
I'm here. I'll cover.
Okay. Why doesn't Lig have a void?
So I touched on this briefly. The Magna Gi are kind of the marker between Lig and Tamriel. All the stars in the sky that let you know it is there. They're present on Lig. So because they are actually there, because they're actually present, they're not punch-throughs in the night sky. And because there's no signal that the sky is out there, there is no void, which actually puts Lig possibly in a pocket within the sea. Possibly a continent submerged, which is why we can only see it when we spill the coffee on a map of Tamriel and see the outline from the inside.
So Lig exists in memory.
Through memory, but yeah.
Okay, I approve. Stamp. Boom.
Cool.
Canon accepted.
So I had a question. So as you go through the various Daedra places in ESO, and you see all the cool machinery and whatnot, darn if it doesn't look a lot like Dwemer tech. So my question is, did the Daedra get the tech from the Dwemer? Did the Dwemer get the tech from the Daedra? Did they come up with it independently? What do we think?
Yes and no. It's both.
Great.
Because in Morrowind, what's his name? Fuck, I forgot his name already. Last Dwemer remaining.
Yagrambagon.
Yeah.
Yagabagba.
He talks about how the Dwemer explored the outer realms, if you will. And in the context of that game, I think I'd take that to be Oblivion. So who's to say that there weren't Dwemer outposts out in little pockets of Oblivion that the Daedra didn't overrun after their disappearance? And who's to say that there wasn't some kind of trade between the two?
I like it.
And if I recall, Yagram says he himself was in the outer realms when Numidium was activated, which is why he survives.
Which begs the question: how many other cases like Yagabagba are there that just didn't ever come home?
Yeah.
I would say probably a lot.
Yeah, I'm a fan.
Yeah, all this
shit,
works for
this
me.
is awkward.
I saw the Outer Realms as the adjacent places. That's what I always saw it as, adjacent places.
Well, yeah, exactly. It's just you can take it as really anything, but in the context of how D&D Morrowind was at the time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But then again, it could be any plane. Exactly. Just Outer Realms can literally be any plane.
I remember speaking briefly with Evan about adjacent places once, where we were talking about the earth bones and how they break and heal, and like the healed bones might hold the adjacent places. I don't remember when we talked about this, but
That was a while ago. Shit.
I know it was like a year ago or 2 or 3.
Yeah, I think it would have been probably like a year and a half-ish ago.
Fuck,
in
that's when I
my
was still working
winter
night
league
shifts.
when I was going full on Lovecraft on the world build for that.
Mhm.
Yeah, because we were talking about adjacent places and is Lig an adjacent place, and I would argue that Lig is an adjacent place
It became one
by
somehow.
semantics. But alternatively, it's also called the adjacent place.
Is it?
Yeah,
I thought it was an
I think
adjacent
that's the
place.
way that it's usually referred to in the sermons. I think the word Lig comes up only a handful of times, but the adjacent place is a stand-in a lot when Beck is talking about Lig. So, I mean, I guess we kind of already hit it that, yeah, Lig is somewhat like, the void because of transdimensionalism. It all fits in.
Good.
Okay, good shit. Good shit.
Somebody save this,
So-
please.
Okay. Okay.
Good
Well,
shit. I'm glad I'm broadcasting right now.
So I had a thought.
Oh boy.
I had a
Jeez.
something that never gets talked about in terms of space is Man and Marco and the Necromancer's Moon,
Oh, yeah.
and how
Do you
He-
believe it's a
he-
construct as well?
well, I mean, I have some unusual thoughts about Necromancer's Moon, and
It's
it
a battle
actually relates-
station.
That's not a moon.
I mean, I guess the ideas I have fit into all my slowed stuff, and I mean, my slowed stuff kind of downplays Man and Marco a little bit, but so I mean, since Man and Marco used the totem of Typer Septim to somehow use Numidium to attain godhood, I mean, it's my thought that the slowed actually originate on Necromancer's Moon, like that's where they came from originally.
Yeah, because Man and Marco bent himself backwards over time to make that shit happen.
Yeah, doesn't he become the Necromancer's Moon?
Yeah. It actually
he
says
uses
in the book,
Numidium.
it actually says in the book he becomes a Necromancer's Moon.
Yeah, he uses Numidium to become the Necromancer's Moon. So
Yeah.
he can create necromancies so that he can become the Necromancer's Moon.
Counterbalance to RK.
Yeah. And so I mean, it's kind of my thought that the slowed originate there, and so they are aliens, which would be why they're so gross all the time.
That kind of makes sense.
So then
they're
you'd say
so-
that it is a actual celestial body that's out there in the void, like all of the other planes / planets.
Yeah. And then I mean, I have this idea that can be accepted or rejected at your leisure. That the first slowed on Tamriel came back in time, a la Pelinal Kinmoon, and landed in the sea and became Thras. Because he's just a massive slowed, just kind of bobbing there in the ocean, and gave birth to the first slowed on Nirn, which then
They
becomes the
budded
slowed
off
that we
of
know in
him.
life. Yeah. And
Via the usual slowed mating ritual.
yes.
Of budding.
And I mean, I wrote a thing.
That's what they call it, budding. Yeah.
I wrote a thing a little while ago. It's like a possible slowed creation myth, and there's lots of language about stress, and I basically equate the slowed to zits on Nirn. If we think of Nern as a face, then the slowed is that really big zit like off to the side there.
Wait, that's not the Somerset?
Zinger.
Oh,
that was harsh.
That's a good one. So okay. Shit, I think we're done. We are going to. I've actually got. Well, I've got everybody here. I already mentioned this before the cast started, but I am planning on transitioning the Lorecast to Twitch. We're going to from here. We're going to start talking about individual Aedra and Daedra. We're going to start getting very granular, and I'd like a lot more, audience participation, more than we already have, which is to say none.
so
and
questions, that way we don't forget anything.
Yeah, and also because we just need to get onto a more regular schedule, and I think if people are expecting us to do it at a certain time, and if they're in one place going, where the fuck are they? Then I think that would help us. Certainly help me. Yeah, well, it would help me. Certainly. And I think everybody else would, probably benefit from that too. And we do need to up the content. We just got to start producing.
Well, we've only been on the hiatus for two years ish, except for one thing. And
Jesus Christ,
it's hard to believe that we've been doing it this long.
But we will still continue to publish these things to this channel. So if you are not into Twitch at all, that's fine. We'll still be showing stuff up on YouTube. But on Twitch, if you watch it as a VOD on Twitch, you'll get the chat as well. So kind of a win-win.
Very useful.
Yeah, I will post in as many places as I can when we determine when those broadcasts are going to happen, and just stay tuned to this channel, this bat channel, for additional information. Until then, everybody wave bye-bye.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Goodbye.